Why are we drowning in anxiety and depression despite more therapy, medication, and self-help than ever before? The answer might shock you. Our modern approaches, while valuable, are missing something profound that ancient traditions have always known. For thousands of years, healing traditions across cultures, from ancient Egypt to China, from indigenous practices to Buddhist monasteries, understood emotional healing in ways we're only beginning to rediscover. Their wisdom wasn't primitive superstition, but sophisticated psychological insight that modern neuroscience is now confirming. Today, I'm sharing 7 ancient wisdom keys that can transform your relationship with difficult emotions. These aren't alternatives to modern therapy, but powerful complements that create a more complete approach to healing. When integrated thoughtfully, these principles can help you navigate emotional challenges with greater resilience, peace, and wholeness. If you've tried everything modern approaches offer, but still feel something's missing, these timeless insights might be exactly what your healing journey needs. Let's explore how ancient wisdom and modern understanding can work together to create profound transformation. Key number 1: spirit and mind dance together. Like rivers converging into a mighty ocean, spiritual and psychological approaches flow together to create profound healing. Ancient traditions recognize that deep emotional healing often benefits from both spiritual and psychological dimensions of support. Have you noticed how sometimes addressing both the mind and spirit creates more complete healing? There's a profound reason for this. Ancient healing traditions understood something that many integrative therapists now recognize. Deep emotional challenges affect us on multiple levels. They touch not just our thoughts and behaviors, but also our sense of meaning, purpose, and connection. Consider the story of Sarah, who experienced significant trauma. Her healing journey included both conventional therapy and spiritual practices like meditation and community ritual. Her therapist noted that this integrative approach allowed for more comprehensive healing, addressing both psychological patterns and deeper questions of meaning that arose from her experience. Ancient Egyptian healing temples practiced incubation, where those seeking healing would sleep in sacred spaces to receive guidance through dreams. Like stars illuminating the night sky, these practices shed light on the soul's deeper questions, while practical interventions addressed immediate needs. When we honor both dimensions of healing, we create a garden where both roots and blossoms receive care. This integrated approach allows us to navigate emotional storms with both practical skills and deeper understanding. This is key number 1. Spirit and mind dance together. When we honor both, our healing becomes more complete, like a tree that reaches both deep into the earth and high toward the sky. I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting abandoning evidence-based practices. Quite the opposite. Modern psychological approaches provide essential tools and insights. What I am proposing is that adding spiritual dimensions, which can be as simple as practices that connect you with meaning, purpose, and something larger than yourself, can enhance the effectiveness of those evidence-based approaches. Many leading trauma researchers like Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and Dr. Gabor Mate now recognize that healing often requires addressing both psychological patterns and deeper questions of meaning and connection. It's not either or, but both and. Key number 2. The body remembers what mind forgets. Our bodies are ancient vessels of wisdom, carrying emotional truths beneath conscious thought. Ancient healing systems recognize that movement and physical practices powerfully influence our emotional well-being. Have you ever noticed how different you feel after a walk in nature compared to hours of thinking about your problems? There's profound wisdom in this simple observation. Take the case of Michael, who struggled with persistent low mood. While he benefited from therapy, his breakthrough came when he added daily ocean swimming to his healing practices. Within weeks, his outlook began to shift dramatically. His therapist explained that physical practices can activate neurobiological pathways that complement the insights gained through therapeutic conversation. His body became a doorway to healing that his mind alone couldn't access. Traditional Chinese medicine recognized thousands of years ago that emotions and physical states are interconnected, like rivers and tributaries flowing through the landscape of our being. Emotional energy moves through specific pathways in the body. When these pathways become dammed, both physical and emotional distress can result. When we engage in movement practices, we release tensions stored in our tissues, like frozen rivers thawing in spring, activate beneficial neurochemicals, like rain after drought, process emotions through the body, like storms clearing the air. This is key number 2. The body remembers what mind forgets. By honoring this ancient wisdom, we add another portal of healing to our journey, tending to both the temple and the prayers within it. If you're resonating with these wisdom keys so far, drop a yes in the comments. I'd love to hear which ones are hitting home for you. Key number 3. Acceptance opens what effort closes. Like soil receiving seeds, acceptance creates the conditions for natural transformation. Ancient wisdom traditions recognize that acceptance complements change in the healing process. Modern therapeutic approaches often focus on practical changes to thoughts and behaviors, which can be incredibly effective. Ancient wisdom adds a complementary insight. Paradoxically, deep acceptance of our current experience can create space for natural transformation. The Taoist concept of wu wei, non-forcing, taught that healing flows naturally when we create the right conditions rather than pushing for change. Like a sailor who understands when to row and when to raise the sail and let the wind do the work, we learn the dance of effort and surrender. Consider the experiences of those who practice acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which beautifully bridges ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Many clients report that learning to accept difficult thoughts and emotions rather than fighting them creates space for new possibilities to emerge naturally. The more they stopped struggling against the current of their experience, the more they found themselves carried to unexpected shores of healing. This isn't about replacing change-oriented approaches, but complementing them with the wisdom that sometimes acceptance itself is transformative. Like the sun melting ice without effort, acceptance can dissolve resistance that effort only strengthens. This is key number 3. Acceptance opens what effort closes. By adding this dimension to our healing journey, we discover that some doors yield not to pushing, but to receiving. Some of you may be thinking, but if I accept my negative emotions, won't I get stuck in them forever? Shouldn't I be trying to change them? This is such an important question. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation or giving up on change. Rather, it's about creating a foundation from which organic change can happen. Think of it like quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the faster you sink. But when you lie back and spread your weight, acceptance, you create the conditions to eventually move to solid ground. Numerous studies show that fighting against difficult emotions often makes them stronger, while accepting them paradoxically allows them to move through us more naturally. Acceptance is not the opposite of change. It's often the doorway to it. Key number 4. Expression completes what insight begins. Emotions must flow like rivers, not just be understood like maps. Ancient healing traditions recognize that emotional expression works powerfully alongside intellectual understanding. Modern therapeutic approaches often help us understand the sources and patterns of our emotional distress, which can be tremendously valuable. Ancient wisdom adds a complementary insight. Emotions also need to be expressed and moved through the body, not just understood by the mind. Indigenous healing ceremonies worldwide created safe containers for emotional expression. Grieving rituals of ancient Greece, like vessels holding sacred waters. Cathartic practices in traditional African healing, like storms clearing the atmosphere. The Jewish tradition of sitting Shiva, like rivers that must flood before finding new channels. The Irish tradition of keening, like winds, giving voice to the forest's pain. These weren't primitive superstitions, but sophisticated practices that acknowledged the importance of emotional expression alongside understanding. Like thunder that must follow lightning, expression completes the circuit that insight begins. The story of David illustrates how these approaches complement each other. After losing his wife, he benefited greatly from grief counseling, gaining important insights about his loss. His healing deepened when he added a grief ritual that allowed him to physically express emotions that couldn't be accessed through conversation alone. The combination of understanding and expression created more complete healing than either approach by itself, like a bird needing both wings to fly. This is key number 4. Expression completes what insight begins. By honoring both dimensions, we create a more complete healing journey, like a song that needs both melody and rhythm to be whole. Key number 5. Witness before you become your story. Like the sky containing storms without becoming them, awareness holds experience. Ancient contemplative traditions discovered the power of the observing self, our capacity to notice thoughts without being defined by them. This insight lies at the heart of meditation practices worldwide. Buddhist mindfulness, like mountains observing weather. Christian contemplative prayer, like still waters reflecting clouds. Hindu self-inquiry, like space holding all objects. Indigenous contemplative traditions, like the earth witnessing seasons. They all point to an important discovery. We have the capacity to observe our thoughts rather than being completely identified with them. Like stepping back from a painting reveals the whole canvas. Stepping back from thoughts reveals a broader perspective. The ancient Upanishads contained the instruction, neti neti, not this, a practice of recognizing that we are more than any particular thought or feeling. Like realizing the ocean is not defined by any single wave, we discover an identity beyond temporary mental states. Modern therapeutic approaches like acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, have integrated this ancient wisdom, helping people develop what psychologists call cognitive diffusion, the ability to observe thoughts rather than being completely identified with them. Neuroscientist Rick Hansen shares the story of a patient who benefited from this approach. While continuing with his existing treatment plan, the patient added practices that helped him observe his thoughts as brain secretions rather than literal truths. This additional perspective created space that contributed to his healing process. He discovered himself as the witness to thoughts, not just their believer, like realizing you are the theater, not just the play being performed. This is key number 5. Witness before you become your story. By developing the capacity to observe our thoughts, we discover freedom within our experience, like finding still waters beneath churning waves. Some of you might be wondering, isn't this just spiritual bypassing? Are we just trying to transcend our problems rather than dealing with them? This is a crucial distinction. Witnessing your thoughts isn't about escaping them or pretending they don't exist. It's about creating enough psychological space to work with them effectively. When we're completely identified with our thoughts, we have no leverage to change them. When we can observe them with some distance, we gain the freedom to respond rather than just react. This approach is actually the opposite of bypassing. It's about engaging more skillfully with our thoughts rather than being controlled by them. Modern therapeutic approaches like DBT and ACT incorporate this principle precisely because it enhances our ability to work with difficult thoughts and emotions, not avoid them. Key number 6. Self-compassion heals. Where judgment wounds, like sunlight melting ice, compassion dissolves shame's grip. Ancient wisdom traditions recognize the healing power of self-compassion, a perspective modern psychology now confirms. How often do you find yourself harshly judging your own emotions? What if this judgment is more problematic than the emotions themselves? Self-compassion practices appear in healing traditions, spanning time and culture. The Christian contemplative practice of welcoming prayer involves extending compassion toward all aspects of our experience, like a host receiving all guests. Buddhist metta, loving kindness, begins with compassion toward oneself, like a garden that must first be tended before offering flowers. Indigenous healing ceremonies created communal containers for acceptance, like fires that hold all who gather around them. Modern research by Dr. Kristin Neff has confirmed that self-compassion is strongly correlated with psychological well-being. Self-compassion doesn't mean avoiding responsibility or accountability. It simply means relating to ourselves with the same kindness we might offer a friend. Like holding a wounded bird gently rather than squeezing it, we hold our pain with tender awareness. Neff shares the case of Thomas, who grew up believing certain emotions were unacceptable. Through therapy, he discovered the negative impact of this self-judgment. When he added self-compassion practices from ancient Buddhist tradition, he found that both approaches together, therapeutic support plus self-compassion, created more complete healing than either approach alone. The kindness he learned to offer himself became like rain on parched earth, allowing new growth where before there was only hardness. This is key number 6. Self-compassion heals where judgment wounds. By developing kindness toward ourselves, we create conditions for natural healing, like plants that thrive not by being forced, but by being nourished. Key number 7. Presence becomes its own refuge. Like the eye of the hurricane, presence offers peace within storms. Ancient wisdom traditions recognize that presence itself is a foundation of well-being. Modern psychology often focuses on changing specific thoughts and behaviors to feel better, which can be tremendously effective. Ancient wisdom adds a complementary insight. Developing our capacity for presence with whatever arises is itself a path to well-being. This means developing the capacity to be with anxiety without being consumed by it, like standing in a river without being swept away. Learning to acknowledge uncertainty while maintaining equilibrium, like trees bending in wind without breaking. Building the ability to feel pain without excessive suffering, like holding fire without being burned. Cultivating presence with sadness without drowning in it, like containing rain without flooding. Acknowledging fear while maintaining perspective, like seeing shadows without mistaking them for reality. The Zen tradition speaks of entering the marketplace with bliss-bestowing hands, fully engaging with life's complexity while maintaining inner balance. Like a lighthouse that stands firm regardless of the weather, presence remains steady amidst changing conditions. Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl discovered through unimaginable suffering that while we cannot avoid all pain, we can always find meaning within our circumstances. This insight became the foundation of logotherapy, which beautifully complements other therapeutic approaches by addressing our fundamental need for meaning. Like stars that guide travelers through darkness, meaning provides orientation when all else is lost. Indigenous wisdom emphasized being in right relationship with all aspects of life, including challenge and difficulty. Rather than seeking to eliminate these experiences, these traditions taught practices for relating to them skillfully, like learning to dance with partners of all kinds. Zen teacher Joan Halifax shares the story of hospice workers who find fulfillment amidst tremendous difficulty, not because they've eliminated emotional responses, but because they've developed the capacity to be present with the full range of human experience. As one nurse described it, the moments that break my heart open are the same ones that make me feel most alive. Like vessels that must be empty to be filled, presence creates space for the fullness of life. This is key number 7. Presence becomes its own refuge. By developing the capacity to be with our experience, we discover a wellspring of peace, not dependent on circumstances, like finding water in the desert within ourselves. Modern approaches. As we have explored these 7 wisdom keys, a clear pattern emerges. These ancient insights can beautifully complement our modern understanding of emotional healing. These aren't alternatives to contemporary approaches, but additional dimensions that can enrich our healing journey. By integrating insights from both ancient wisdom and modern psychology, we create a more comprehensive approach to emotional well-being, like a tapestry woven with threads of many colors. Let's imagine applying these keys to a challenging emotional experience. Imagine you're facing anxiety about an upcoming change in your life. Instead of only trying to change your anxious thoughts, which can be helpful, you might also 1. Spirit and mind dance together. Complement practical anxiety management techniques with practices that address the spiritual dimension, perhaps connecting with a supportive community or exploring the deeper meaning this transition holds for you. 2. The body remembers what mind forgets. Add movement practices that help process the physical sensations of anxiety, maybe a daily walk in nature, gentle yoga, or expressive dance to release tension held in your body. 3. Acceptance opens what effort closes. Practice acknowledging your anxiety without immediately trying to make it go away. Like making room for an uninvited guest, you create space for the feeling without letting it take over the house. Expression completes what insight begins. Find ways to express your feelings beyond just understanding them, perhaps through writing, art, music, or speaking with others who can truly hear you. 5. Witness before you become your story. Practice observing your anxious thoughts without completely identifying with them. Notice the difference between "I am anxious" and "I notice anxiety arising in my experience." 6. Self-compassion heals where judgment wounds. Offer yourself the same kindness you would offer a friend facing similar feelings. Replace "I shouldn't feel this way" with "this is a difficult moment and it's natural to feel this way." 7. Presence becomes its own refuge. Develop your capacity to be present with anxiety without being consumed by it. Like standing in a storm with good rain gear, you acknowledge the weather while maintaining your center. By integrating these ancient wisdom keys with modern approaches, you create a more comprehensive response to emotional challenges, one that honors both timeless wisdom and contemporary understanding. The next time you face emotional difficulty, consider adding some of these ancient practices to your healing toolkit. It's not about replacing what works, but about enriching your approach with dimensions that have supported human well-being for millennia. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit. In the comments, let me know which of these wisdom keys resonated most strongly with you. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of ancient wisdom for emotional healing. Until next time, may you find balance and well-being on your journey to a better life.